back on? Okay, good, we'll need that. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Caitlin Saposi-Belknap. I moved to Amen's National Director. I'm in California right now, and I'm gonna be doing this webinar with you tonight. So I'm going to go through a little bit of background about Move to Amen, because a number of folks who are on here are new, and then get to how you can join us in August and citizen lobby your representative and senators in support of the We the People Amendment. So if you have questions along the way, you can type them in the chat bar at the bottom of your screen, and I'll take questions at the end. And this webinar is being recorded, and it's also on Facebook Live right now. So let's see, I should actually pull up Facebook real quick on my phone here to make sure that if there's any questions there, I can also see those. So if you have any thoughts, just let me know. I will take those at the end, and the webinar will be recorded, and we will send it to everybody who RSVP'd, and that way if you have to jump out of here, or if you're having any difficulties hearing or anything like that comes up, or just for future reference, we'll also be putting it on our website for the page for this campaign, which I will tell you about later. So let's jump in. All right. Actually, before we do, let me also just turn on the chat and make it so that everybody who's here could see who else is here. And if you want to say hey and where you're tuning in from, feel free to go ahead and do that right now. And if you're on Facebook, you can do the same too. All right, so like I said, we're gonna give a quick overview of Move to Amend for anybody who's new, just a refresher for those of you who aren't, and then we'll talk about August as We the People Lobby Month. I'll give you some tips on how to lobby and how to get started with this campaign. And then I'll answer questions at the end. And if you have questions about anything I said at any point, feel free to put them in the chat. But also, if we've got time, I can answer some general questions about Move to Amend if there was anything that I didn't cover. So our mission is, we're a coalition of hundreds of thousands of organizations and hundreds of thousands of individuals who are committed to social and economic justice, ending corporate rule, and building a vibrant democracy that's genuinely accountable to the people, not corporate interests. And our goals are to pass the We the People Amendment, which makes clear that artificial entities like corporations do not have constitutional rights, and that money is not speech. And our other goal is to provoke discussion and organizing about how we can make real the promise of American democracy through constitutional renewal, and actually make good on that promise that this would be a democratic republic that would recognize the human rights of everyone. We're not there yet. So our principles and values that we've been working from for the last 10 years since we formed in advance of the Citizens United ruling and kind of in preparation for the Citizens United ruling are anti-oppression and solidarity organizing. We think it's really important to really get to the root of what this country has been about, and how it is not an accident that we find ourselves in a situation where property, which is what corporations are, have more rights than human beings. That is actually a not surprising outcome from a country that was based in its foundational law on human beings being property, and also the theft and colonization from the people who originally inhabited this continent. And we can't talk about the personhood rights, the rights for human beings, without grappling with that historical context that got us to this situation. We also have a strong belief in understanding, history and context, and the movements that have been fighting for human rights and making that, promise of American democracy real all along the way who have done that effectively through solidarity organizing whenever we have had success. And the history of this country can be seen through the lens of a story of people trying to drive ourselves into the Constitution that we were originally left out of. Howard Zinn is who originally talked about that, and we definitely believe that is the story of this country, and that is the history that we are stepping into and trying to further and be part of as well at Move to Amend. So we strongly believe in coalition and movement building. We are not going to successfully amend the Constitution without building a people's movement for power. This is not going to happen because some generous people in Congress decide that they're going to overturn the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court decides that it was wrong to give corporations more rights than people, right? This is going to come in response to pressure from a people's movement for power, and that's what we need to build. And so we do our organizing at the grassroots level. Move to Amend is grassroots based. I'm not sitting in Washington, D.C. We actually don't even have an office in Washington, D.C. We're rooted in communities. That's why our structure is the way that it is with our local chapters. And our read of history of this country is that that's always who has been successful at making the kind of fundamental change that we're seeking to make too, grassroots organizing. We also have an ongoing dedication to political education because it's so important to understand how we got here and what all these layers of misinformation and propaganda about the myths of what America has been about and what its role in the world has been and how it has been to the people who have been living here. And we have to unpeel all of that back to really understand how we're going to change it fundamentally. And we also need to understand how movements before us were successful so that we can replicate those successes and build on them for modern times, but also understand how so often movements were fractured and undermined and divided, and also protect ourselves against that as well. And so understanding and just having an ongoing commitment to political education, which is always evolving, and there's always room for more learning there. And so as an organization, we have that value for sure, and we take it very seriously. And then keeping our political and economic independence as an organization. We are not aligned with any political party. We do not get our funding from large organizations. We are grassroots based on our funding as well. And that's really important to us because, again, looking at historically, and it happens today too, organizations that are beholden to a few donors or a political agenda then will sell out, their goals for that agenda or for the people who are funding them, and we can't have that. So Move to Amend maintains our political and economic independence always. So a quick refresher for us on amending the Constitution, because it's not something that normally comes up in everyday conversation, so you might not totally remember what the Constitution says about this. There are two ways to amend the Constitution, according to the Constitution. 2/3 of both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, have to pass an amendment resolution, and then 3/4 of state legislatures have to ratify it. That's one option. That's the way that the Constitution has been amended always before. And that's mostly what we're going to talk about today, that route, in terms of lobbying Congress, obviously. There is another way to amend the Constitution through a constitutional convention. The Constitution doesn't give us a lot of information about what that might look like, the mechanics of it, how the delegates are chosen, all the details, and it's not something that's been done before. So there's a lot unknown, but it is in there, and it is the more popular in terms of, populist, directly, more in the hands of the people versus Congress way to amend the Constitution. So 2/3 of state legislatures can call for a convention to propose an amendment, and then 3/4 of states still have to ratify any amendment proposal that would come from a constitutional convention. Move to amend is currently more engaged in option 1 on Congress. However, we're not opposed to a constitutional convention. In fact, it has been the case in the past with some amendment efforts that it wasn't until the states started to organize to effectively threaten a constitutional convention that Congress moved and responded. And so we recognize that, you know, strategy-wise, we might have to employ that option. However, in the political climate that we are in now, we don't think that a constitutional convention call is wise. And there are a number of state legislatures who would probably try to use that opportunity to move forward a far-right agenda, which would, you know, undermine most of the values of Move to Amend in terms of human rights and political rights for all people, you know, equality, environmental protection, etc. Women having rights. And so we have to build a movement that is powerful enough to amend the Constitution, regardless of which way it happens, and that doesn't move us backwards. And so that's what we're working to do, is build that people's movement, and the exact path that it will take, we don't feel like is determined at this point, but our amendment has been introduced in Congress, and that's where we focus most of our time and energy. So our strategy is mostly focusing not so much on Congress, although we have made a lot of progress, and I'll talk about that in a second, on our proposal that's been introduced there. And that's obviously mostly what this webinar is about. But our main target is the American people, because when building a movement for power, again, that's not going to be led by members of Congress. They will get on board when we force them to get on board. So we need to build that capacity in that movement. And as I've said already, we do that through coalition building, working with other organizations that work on issues that are affected by corporate power, helping people understand how corporate constitutional rights, or this idea that corporations can exercise constitutional rights to undermine efforts by the public to protect ourselves against corporate harm, is fundamentally at odds with the work that people are doing against the symptoms of corporate power, and trying to kind of make those deeper connections and build alliances with the organizations who are working on all the effects, rather than the systemic legal background for why that harm is happening in the first place. We also do that. Our strategy is also to build a broad and diverse, multiracial and intergenerational movement, reaching out to those most affected by corporate rule. I think that in this time in our history, I probably less than any other time need to explain why it's important that we are intentional about building a multiracial and intergenerational movement. But I will just say that this is work that requires concerted time, energy, focus, and skills. And those skills have to be developed, because they're not actually skills that come innately. We actually live in a white supremacist society. And so to the contrary, we are trained in numerous ways to avoid building alliances across racial lines, and in fact are woefully inadequate in having those skills and tools. And that's why it's really important that we as organizations doing movement work help our folks develop that that training and those skills and the tools to work across those differences, which doesn't necessarily come easily, but is so critical if we're going to have the numbers that we need. And that's true, you know, across other differences as well. But obviously, the United States is incredibly racially polarized, and that fact has been used by the ruling elite over, you know, since the founding of this country, to undermine our ability to have you know, a movement that will see to it that working class people's rights are protected and that we have equality in this country. And so, you know, that's part of why we need to put our energy towards that, regardless of the issue that we might be working on. And that's true on intergenerational divides as well. I mean, we're very divided in a number of ways in the United States, and it undermines our ability to build power together. And so we have to figure that out and do better if we're going to be successful. And then we also believe that what we really need to be doing is community organizing, not just activism. So especially in the, world of social media activism, where, you will kind of be given the impression that if you click a petition, you're somehow exercising, power, and that's all you need to do. No, we actually really need to build power in our communities through relationships in real life. Obviously, so much of what we have to do right now is virtual because of COVID, but at the end of the day, we can't just be, separate individuals writing a letter here and there and thinking that that's going to make any difference to the people who are in power. We actually have to pressure them and force them to respond, and we can do that through community organizing. And then we put a lot of energy on our grassroots organizing to pass local and state resolutions calling for the amendment. And we just always, even though we've moved a little bit away from that strategy in recent years, I always like to bring us back to it because it's so fundamental to the base of power that we've built so far. And we are going to need another wave of those local and state resolutions in order to kind of take it to the next level going forward. So our structure is that we have Move to Amend advocates, which are individuals working in their community. Maybe there's not enough of a critical mass yet. Maybe they're folks who work with other organizations already. And so the idea of like forming a whole Move to Amend chapter is at odds with some of the other work that folks are trying to do. Like I mentioned, a lot of people come to Move to Amend because they're also working on kind of the symptoms of corporate rule 2 that are affecting their community. So we've created this category of folks who want to be Move to Amend advocates, advancing Move to Amend, but also potentially working with other groups or not part of a chapter yet. And maybe that's, something to build towards, or maybe they stay advocates for a long time. And then we have Move to Amend affiliates, which is what we call our chapters. Those are locally based groups, most of the time working in, a city or maybe county, and in a network building up to a state network of affiliates from all over their state, and then having those groups work together to push for state resolutions and targeting Congress members and senators of the state. And then We the People Amendment working groups is a category for folks who are already part of another organization. Maybe you're a chapter of some other organization that aligns with Move to Amend, and you don't want to become a Move to Amend chapter because you already have a different identity. Well, you can be a Move to Amend working group as your group. And then nationally, we have a national leadership team, which is made up of our board and staff. We have national committees that do kind of specific area-based work, and then around supporting our local groups or doing outreach, media and messaging, stuff like that. And then we also have issue and sector caucuses. So we have a labor caucus, we have a next gen caucus for young people, we have an interfaith caucus, and we have an arts and culture caucus for folks who are artists. So if you fit into any of those categories and want to work with Move to Amend that way, feel free to say that in the feedback afterwards, and we can connect you with the people who could plug you in there. So let's talk about August and the reason why you guys are all here for this webinar. August is We the People Lobby Month at Move to Amend. We've been doing this for a number of years. In years past, we have, for the last several years, been in Washington, D.C. in July, and then August is for our national conference. And then August is sort of the follow-up that people can do if they're not able to come to the conference, or to follow up on the work that, on the lobby work that we do in D.C. as part of our national conference. But we didn't have a conference in D.C. this year, so we're just focusing on the August recess. Congress is still going to go on recess. I know there's a lot up in the air in terms of what's going to happen with the next coronavirus relief vote, and maybe the recess will get extended or delayed, postponed a bit. But we're going to proceed assuming that it's still happening, because everything we've heard is that it is. And we do know that it is a big election year, and most members are going to want to go back home and begin campaigning. And so, and they like their vacation. So normally what happens is that whole month they don't have official meetings in DC. and they're in district. Many of them are already in district, but they're more available and accessible for meetings with constituents. They're also starting to get into election mode, and even though they take, you know, some amount of time for a vacation, then they're also more available for the rest of the month. So the meetings that we're going to hold are going to be virtual, and there has been a lot more of this happening, and so this is something that they'll be used to. So through Zoom or another platform, holding a meeting and asking representatives to co-sponsor the We the People Amendment and for senators to introduce it. I'll talk about that in a second. So affiliates, our chapters are going to be setting up meetings with their district and Senate offices in their states, but this is also an opportunity for all of you who are new to organize these meetings too. And the really awesome thing, you know, there are most of the things about the moment that we're in with COVID are not awesome at all. But one thing that is kind of nice is that you can set up these meetings, and normally we would not be in a position as national to have somebody join you for that meeting. You know, if you're in a state where we don't have anybody, you'd be on your own, which you can totally do. And we'll provide you with resources and background, and frankly, you don't have to be an expert at this to be effective at doing this. What you're doing is you're speaking from your own personal experience, why you support Move to Amend, why you think this amendment needs to happen, and telling your representative as a constituent that you want them to sign on. And hopefully we can also, you know, put together a pool of folks so it's not just one person, although you can do it as just you, and we can give you a list of Move to Amend petition signers in that district, so at least you're kind of there representing however thousands many people are in that district who also are supporters. But the goal is to have at least a couple constituents, and you can bring in friends, or we can connect you with other people from the Move to Amend list who can join you. And then if you want, we also would be able to have a national rep, or maybe somebody from a neighboring chapter somewhere else in your state who has done a lobby meeting like this before, join you if you like, and make it even just a little bit easier for you to do it for the first time if you've never done it before. So that's nice, because normally that's not on the table for us to do. And then we will be doing calling all month long. And the other thing that I didn't put on this is that we also will be doing a briefing for legislative staff. So August is also a time where on the staff end of things back in DC, they have a little bit lighter schedule, and they're a little bit more available to hear kind of background information on things. And so we have in the past done in person a briefing, you know, on the Hill during this month. And we will do that again, but we'll do it virtually. And so that will also supplement the organizing and advocacy and outreach that you'll be doing as well. So our goal for this year and ending this Congress is to get 75 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. And the good news is we're already at 74. So we only need to get one to meet our goal. Frankly, every single time each Congress has ended since we have done this, so that would be 4 different Congresses that the We the People Amendment has been introduced in, we have surpassed our goal at the end of each Congress. So we're really hoping to do that again. Frankly, the fact that we're only at 74 is in part because of, in large part because of the pandemic, and the fact that longer term systemic issues like this has been hard to get on representatives' radars. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to at least get to 75, but I still hope that we can beat our goal like we have done in years past, because the further we get each time, the sooner we will move forward on this amendment, which we needed, you know, yesterday urgently, right? And then on the Senate side, unfortunately, we are not in the same place as we are on the House side. We're behind in terms of our goals. We had wanted to have it introduced in the Senate already. The hopeful piece of info is that we do have a senator who is willing to introduce the amendment, but he has said that he wants to do that with at least 5 colleagues. And what we don't have yet is those 5 colleagues secured. And again, because of the pandemic, this spring, we kind of were set back in terms of making progress there, but we're hoping that you as constituents and the most important people who are to talk to senators are the ones who can make all the difference in potentially helping to secure those additional 5 folks. I will tell you in a sec who the kind of top targets for senators are. So if you live in many of those states, that would be, that would be really important to try and set up a meeting with those senators or their offices. But we're still going after, anybody and everybody. So I just want to talk a little bit about the purposes of lobbying, because obviously with all the corporate lobbyists that we hear about all the time, lobbying has a bit of a bad name, and understandably so. But we're talking about citizen lobbying here. And so the purpose is to educate an elected official about an issue. You would be surprised at how much they are not going to know about this. And so that's one thing that, if you're feeling like, gosh, I'm not an expert on corporate constitutional rights or the law or corporate law, that's okay. Your representative, chances are, is not either. And that's not, the level of conversation that you're going to be having. You're going to have, kind of a pretty basic level conversation and doing some initial education. You also want to identify whether they're a supporter of your position or an opponent or undecided. You want to identify that for the purposes of kind of like how you go about the conversation, but also that's important information for us to have. The reality is that, Move to Amend as a grassroots-based group, we haven't had a chance to talk to every single member of Congress yet. So if we have talked to your rep's office, we will let you know what we know about them. But part of what you're doing is some reconnaissance for all of us to determine, where they stand. And most of the time when we're talking to offices, we're talking to staffers, and hopefully as constituents, you can actually get some meetings with the reps themselves, and then you can get more clear information about where they really stand. And then you want to move them. If they're a supporter, you want to move them to be a champion and to actually, step out and co-sponsor and put their actions where their mouth is. If they're undecided, you want to move them into being a supporter. And if they're an opponent, you want to soften or neutralize them. So you're not going to move Mitch McConnell into being a co-sponsor. Just not going to happen. However, somebody who is an opponent, what you might be able to do is help them see perspective that they weren't otherwise thinking of. You might help them see that there are people in their district who care about this and are watching them, and maybe they shouldn't come out guns a-blazing against us the way they might otherwise. And you also might be able to get information for us to help neutralize them going forward. So our targets and our ask are really straightforward. In the House of Representatives, we need them to co-sponsor House Joint Resolution 48. So We the People Amendment is what we call it, but officially its name is HJR 48. And then if you're talking to senators, we need them to introduce a companion bill to House Joint Resolution 48. So we want the exact same language introduced. And there is a little bit of like politics with the senator, so I'm not going to share who that is because this is on Facebook Live, and that has been requested that because we're still in process of trying to kind of line up those other supporters. He doesn't want his name to be out there as for sure a supporter. So we're trying to, finesse this and solidify him and provide him the cover that he needs to be braver and actually step out and do it. And so when you're talking to your senators, what you're looking to do is really just say, there is a lead, and would you be willing to join them? And we'll give you more details about that as you sign up and we get closer. So the top priority senators, so you have a sense, are these folks on this list here. And the reason why these people are top targets are for a number of reasons. One, because they represent states where we have the strongest amount of support and pressure that we can wage to lean on them. They also may have said things indicating support for overturning Citizens United, addressing money in politics, addressing corporate power. They may have introduced, or they may be a co-sponsor on a similar amendment that doesn't go far enough, but is a good first step. And we have had conversations with all of these offices already, to some extent. Some of them a lot, and some of them a little bit. And then also they may be on this list because they have been identified as, their politics are more in line with what we're trying to do than maybe some other senators. But again, if your senator or senators are not on this list, then that does not mean that you cannot hold a meeting that would be important with your senator as well. But if your senator isn't on this list and you're only going to do one meeting, then we would ask that you first prioritize the meeting with your representative, unless of course your representative is already a co-sponsor, in which case then moving to your senator, one of your senators, or both. And if you want to do a meeting with all three, even if your rep is already a co-sponsor, and just to thank them and sort of helps us solidify that support, that's great, and you will get bonus extra credit gold stars, and that would be awesome. And again, doing it virtually means that it's, maybe 30 minutes meeting at most, and we will help you prepare, and we can even potentially join you. And so it's not a huge request in terms of time out of your life to do this, and it's for an incredibly important cause that really underpins almost every other harm and problem that we're trying to address. It's corporate personhood and money in politics, right? So it's really, really important. And if you can take a little bit of time, that will be huge. So what we will give you to do this is talking points and support on kind of making your pitch, educational information to send to your legislators, a list of petition signers in your district so that you can help, maybe there's only 2 of you who go in, but there's 3,000 people who have signed the petition, then you can give them all their names to help show that this is something with mass support. And we can also connect you with others in your state to help make it so that, there's more people in the meeting ideally, and of course, troubleshooting and support. So what you'll need to do to get prepared is decide who you want to target. I kind of gave you a little bit of info on that already in terms of deciding, Senate versus rep and et cetera. You can also, like I said, go to existing co-sponsors if that's who makes the most sense, or if you want to do your rep and your senators, but they're already a co-sponsor, then great. A, lucky you, and then B, it's really important. You can still take somebody who has said that they're on board and help solidify that support. I mean, maybe they only came on because they got some pressure, but they haven't really heard from anyone in a year, and it's coming up as election time, and we need them to be talking about this more. We need them to be advocating more publicly that they're a supporter. You can help push them in that direction by bringing this to their attention. And as a constituent, when you do that, it's just so much more powerful than when we do it at national. So you'll need to decide who you're going to target, how many meetings you're going to have, 1 to 3. And then you need to schedule the meetings, and we'll give you example scripts and kind of tips for how to go about doing that. And then you'll want to put a little bit of research. You don't have to go, you don't have to learn their vote on every single thing or anything like that, but just a little bit of a sense of kind of where they might be, other things that they have said, or kind of where they get their money from to help you have a sense of whether they're likely to be, a supporter, neutral, or an opponent. And a list of endorsing organizations in your district, which we can help you with. And there may be some work that you might want to do to try and secure a few more endorsements before you go in, if you've got connections with groups that you think would endorse Move to Amend or the We the People Amendment. So before your meeting, you'd want to get familiar with the talking points that we'll provide you, and actually that are up on the site now, and I'll show you where that page is before we end here. Practice telling your story. Why do you support the We the People Amendment? Again, you do not have to come up with every single explanation for why this amendment should pass. Pick the thing that is what motivates you, and speak on this from your, you know, personal perspective. That's actually what's most powerful. Being, you know, some kind of legal expert is not needed, and is not something that is going to be as effective as you talking about why, you know, as a parent in your community, you're concerned about, you know, toxins and the fact that corporations are able to get away with putting toxic, you know, substances in their products and not even tell us about it because their right to free speech trumps our right to know, for example, right? So we can help you kind of figure that out if you're not completely sure how to articulate, but I think probably all of you know why you support Move to Amend, and just talking about that and kind of just honing it a little bit so that you can be concise, because that's the big thing, is you're not going to have a whole lot of time. So the biggest issue is that you just don't want to ramble. Not that you have to have, you know, all your ducks in a row in terms of knowing everything. And you can also always, if there's questions that come up from the staff or from the rep, you can definitely say, that's a really good question. I'm going to make sure to get that down, and then we'll get you the answer. And then Move to Amend can help follow up with materials that will provide that answer, but also even a conversation. I've had numerous conversations with staff to kind of follow up on constituent meetings, and that's super normal and what they expect. And so you don't have to know the answer to every question. In fact, if you don't know the answer to any questions that they ask, that's not a problem at all. And then, like I said, doing a little bit of research about your rep, just so you have a sense. If you already know them, then great. But if this isn't something you've done before, it'll probably just mostly make you feel a little bit more comfortable to have a sense of kind of where they might be on this. And we'll definitely tell you again if we've had any conversations with their office or anything that we know, so that everything you know, everything we know you're going in there with. And then you want to send them an info packet in advance, give them a chance to look it over, which will also help make it more likely that you'll have a more productive conversation. Because if you don't, then they might just kind of be like, tell me about this, and then, you know, that's it. And then they'll just say, well, we got to think about it, and that's that. At your meeting, be prepared to meet with a legislative aide. So as a constituent, our hope is that you can get a meeting with your representative, but it's not a guarantee that that will happen. And just know that at the end of the day, the people who decide whether representatives and senators sign on to something really are more the staff than the person themselves. They trust their staff to do the research to find out if this is something that they should support. And chances are that they're not going to sign up for anything that staff haven't already been convinced of. So if you do end up meeting with a staff person and not your representative, that is still a win, and it's still really important. And you can still end up successfully getting them to co-sponsor, never talking to your rep. Most of our folks who have signed on have not signed on from necessarily direct meetings with their constituents. So just keep that in mind and don't worry, but you know, it is better if you can get them if possible. Make sure you stay on topic. You don't want to chit chat too much because you have a limited amount of time. We haven't really tried doing these virtual meetings, so you may end up with a little bit more time, but if you're meeting in their office, lots of times it's only like 15 minutes. And so you want to be, you know, succinct and stick to your agenda and not end up going too far afield and then accidentally realizing you only have 5 minutes left to make your pitch. You want to get their views on the issue. So you want to make your pitch, but then you also want to give them a chance to give you feedback. That's important for you to relay to us so that we have a sense of where they stand and what their concerns are, or what motivates them if they're a supporter. And just, you know, giving them a chance to kind of give you information back is really important. And then when you finish the meeting, offer to send additional information on any questions that have come up, your contact information, and then offering to be a resource going forward. And that's something that they're always looking for. Again, you'll be surprised how many of them maybe have never even thought about this before. And we'll be happy to know that there's someone in their community who cares about this, who would be able to get them more information through Move to Amend whenever they need it. And then take a picture. It's going to be a little awkward, so you're going to have to take like a screenshot of the Zoom meeting, but we really want to help folks see what Move to Amend is doing this month. We want to make it big, and so making sure that you capture the fact that you did this is really helpful to us. So a few tips, and then I'll open it up to any questions. Just a couple more things here. Don't make statements that assume that others share your political views. So, you know, when doing a meeting like this, it's really best to stay on topic and to remember that this is an issue that actually has broad cross-partisan support, people from all the different parties, independents, etc. Maybe that's less true of members of Congress, but the reality is, like, you don't need to make it partisan if you don't have to, right? So I would not, you know, pick it up, go in and, you know, go on and on about Trump or something like that, when you could be focusing on, you know, more general issues around corporate corruption, etc. Especially off the bat, you know, and then once you kind of have a sense of how they're responding, then maybe you can offer a little bit more. Be respectful when talking about all political leaders is just for the best, again, in this context, and then staying focused on Move to Amend. And after your meeting, we have an online report form that's really important for you to fill out. You could even have somebody, it's a good idea to have somebody taking notes if you've got enough people, and they could even be taking notes in the form since you're going to be online, just really getting, you know, as much detail as you can about like the questions that were asked, the tone. It's all important for us later and for you on the follow-up to remember. Sending follow-up materials to address the questions, we can help you with that. So when you tell us what they asked, you know, you might already know, but we have a ton of information, having done this for 10 years now, on all different aspects. And so we can, there's probably a handout or, you know, article or something like that that we've already written that you can offer to speak to their question. So let us know, and that's part of why that form is so important. And then sending a thank you note by mail the next day, we can give you a template for what to say, but having that personal touch is an important thing, and it also is a good way for it to come across our radar again. And that's true whether you meet with the rep or a staff person, is just sending a note to thank them. It's something that less people do now, and so it'll, you know, be noticed more if you do something like that. And then debriefing next steps with your group, if there's a group of you or if we join you, checking in about it, and then planning to follow up by telephone in 10 to 14 days. And you'll tell them that, you know, and they're gonna say 99.9% of the time, whether it's the rep or if it's a staffer, then they'll most definitely say, you know, I need to check with my boss and I'll be able, you know, and we'll have to see or something like that. And then you want to say, okay, can I follow up, you know, in a couple weeks to see how those conversations are going. And our experience oftentimes is that it takes months of follow-up sometimes to kind of like get them to actually have that conversation with their boss. So being diligent about that follow-up, telling them to expect it, and then actually doing it, and we can help you with that as well. And so to get started, you can go to movetoamend.org/lobby to sign up. There's a sign up form there where you can kind of let us know what you're thinking. You don't have to have all the details. You want to do that before you have your meeting scheduled, just kind of to let us know, you know, who is thinking of doing this. If there are more than one of you from the same district, we'll definitely connect you with each other. And then there's a bunch of materials on that page that you can familiarize yourself with. Once you schedule your meeting, and there are directions on that page for how to go about doing that, you can then let us know about the meeting. So first we're asking you to just sign up to say that you're interested, even if you're not totally sure, you know, what you want to do or how you want to do it. And then, you know, once things get solidified, then we're asking you to sign up again and kind of let us know specifically about the meeting, and if you need a Move to Amend helper there, and you know, anything else that we can provide in advance. And recruit your friends to join you. This is a pretty easy ask. Again, it's not even going into their office, right? So just hopping on the computer for a little while If you have any friends who care about, you know, global warming, money in politics, corporate corruption, ask them to come join you and actually, you know, do something about their political views and help you make this meeting more effective. And then definitely make sure you let us know your plans. So that is the overview. I'm going to take a minute here to skim and see what questions we've had. And I'll also look over at Facebook too in just a second. Let's see. Okay, so a question about, you know, does it make sense for me to bother trying to talk to my senators if they're, you know, extremely pro-corporate? And I would say that's totally for you to decide what you want to do. We shouldn't, it is our goal to, you know, to pressure every single one of them in the long run and not let any of them off the hook. However, if your representative is more likely to, you should start with whoever you think is most likely to be swayed, right? And so pick whoever is most likely to say yes or to be amenable, even if they don't do it right away. You know, if this is a process that you and us can begin. Let's start there. We certainly have tried more for the like low-hanging fruit strategy so far, and there's still a number of reps that we could get in that department. And as you saw, there's a whole bunch of, you know, more progressive, I'll say, senators that are our top targets too. So let's start with the ones who are most likely to say yes. Looks like we've got somebody from East LA who's interested. Awesome. Northern California. Let's see. I'm gonna focus on the questions that have to do with, Rachel, I see you raising your hand. I don't actually have a way to take you off of mute. So if you wanna just type your question into the chat, I will read it out and make sure we get it here. Paul had said, knowing what staff attended Hill briefings would be helpful. Yeah, so if anybody has done any work, so if we've had any kind of response from the offices that you're going to be talking with, whether we've met with them, because I and others on the national team have met with a number of House staffers over the last several years. And so if there's been any communication, we will tell you for sure. And then obviously, as we do that meeting in August, or that briefing in August, if anybody comes who's, you know, a rep from your district office, we will let you know for sure. Looks like some people wanting the slides. Yep, all that will be provided on the page, and then we'll email everyone who signed up. Scott asked, can we assume the staffers are familiar with Citizens United? Yes, for the most part, although their understanding still might be like pretty surface level. And remember that one of the things that's really important is there are multiple amendment proposals to address Citizens United, and ours is the strongest in terms of addressing the two underlying doctrines that made Citizens United possible in the first place, the idea that corporations have rights and the idea that money is speech. Ours is the only amendment that addresses both of those. But we've got to assume that the staff probably don't totally understand that. And so that's, we've got materials to help you make that, do that education. And if they understand Citizens United, they probably only understand like kind of the basics. So helping them understand corporate constitutional rights and how it goes beyond just money and politics is sort of a key part of the meeting. And that's why the materials that we'll give you will help you do that. And also we can talk you through that if you would like additional support there. Anne asked, how do I find others in my area from Move to Amend? So the best thing to do is sign up on the form saying that you're interested in doing this, and then we will connect you with others. So we may send out a message to others in your district saying, hey, there's somebody who's willing to spearhead setting up a meeting in August and they're looking for some other folks to join, and then see if we can get any signups that way. We also might know of people who are already active in your district who are maybe not part of an affiliate yet. So we will, you know, do our best to try and connect you with some other folks, but the first thing to do is sign up on the form and let us know that you're interested. A state or local, let's see, a local state rep says that because corporations are not allowed to vote, they should be allowed to spend money. That was a question from Sally. A corporation is not a person. The individuals that are involved in the corporation are currently allowed to spend money and allowed to vote. And right now what we're seeing is that, you know, elections are dominated by corporate money and those with money, and it is causing people to, you know, choose not to participate in the political process. It is making Americans believe that political corruption is what rules our country, and it undermines democracy. So, you know, corporations should not be allowed to spend money or have constitutional rights because they're not in the Constitution. And the Supreme Court never had authority to give them these powers. That's how I would initially answer that. Hopefully that's helpful, and we can talk through that a little bit more. Let's see. I don't. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Jeffrey's got several questions here. Let's see. What are the characteristics of movements / organizations that have been successful? What are the characteristics of those who have not been successful? I'm guessing that you're talking about like sort of in a broader sense. So there's a number of different ways to go about that. That's kind of a big question. But a lot of what we would take from our historical read is that organizations that are able to build power across, you know, racial, class divides, and kind of come at issues from multiple angles is really important and are successful. Also, movements that have been deep in their demands rather than just sort of surface level, that actually look to, you know, how their goals are systemic rather than just incremental or surface or band-aid, are able to make change that is actually lasting. An example that comes to mind is the fact that the Supreme Court in recent years has been able to gut the Voting Rights Act because the civil rights movement, and, you know, obviously there's much success and much power that was built through the civil rights movement, but one lesson I think that we can take away is that by not advocating for a constitutional amendment and a right to vote in the Constitution and leaving it up to legislation passed by Congress, then that left kind of the back door open for the Supreme Court to undermine that legislation, you know, decades later, but still nonetheless, and to gut the Voting Rights Act, and then for Congress to do nothing about it. So the more systemic, the more deep our demands, the more likely we are to be able to hold them. Let's see, there's a whole bunch of questions there, so I'm going to keep on going so that some other people, but I'll come back if there's time. And how are we doing on time? Let's see. Okay, we've been at an hour, so try to keep this mostly to an hour. I'll do my best to get to all of these though. Let's see. I'm going to go to Facebook a little bit. Okay, a tip, talking about the Constitutional Convention. So if you have questions about, or an amendment convention, I hear you, Charlie. So if people have questions about that, then there's some discussion happening on Facebook about that if you want to go look. Let's see, Alex, hey, Alex says the movement is solidified, almost 80,000 followers, hopefully move to amend. Followers are spreading the word, action in keeping with the message. Yeah, and actually Move to Amend has almost, 470,000 supporters on our website. That's just Facebook. Okay, and it looks like Charlie, thanks for your work moving it forward in Maryland. Sounds like good progress, but there's still, needing to have that meeting. They're working with Elijah Cummings' successor, who is obviously new to Congress, and so therefore just kind of getting started. But that's great. Okay, and then let's see. I want to go back to these questions. Sorry, this is easier when there's two of us who can kind of go through this, but that's not what we got tonight. Last year I had a Republican, John says, last year I had a Republican state senator getting enthused who sadly was accidentally retired, killed in the intervening recess. I have not gone to any GOP officials since then, but there are some Dem state House and state move to amend advocates in my city assembly. Okay, well, that sounds like a good start. Not totally sure from this where you are. So in terms of your federal rep, I mean, you can obviously, you know, meeting with anybody who's in office is important. And we are also in the middle of our Pledge to Amend campaign, which is targeting people running for office at any level. So state office and local as well as federal. But the goals for the August recess are to focus on our federal reps and senators and move forward there while they're on recess. So just so everybody gets that. And if for whatever reason you would rather focus on a different elected official, then probably best to do that through the Pledge to Amend campaign, which you can find at movetoamend.org/pledge-amend and ask them to take the pledge, which they can do at any point, whether they're running for re-election or just sitting in office now. Ian asks, what's the status of HJR 48? It appears it has been stuck in subcommittee since March of 2019. I reached out to my representative weeks ago and have yet to receive a response. Is there a deadline for committee to have addressed this resolution? Is there a timeline? So I would encourage you, Ian, to go take a look at our strategic plan, which is at movetoamend.org/plan. In terms of where things are at with Congress, it's not moving forward. It is in the Judiciary Committee. That's kind of just the first place where it goes. And we don't expect it to move forward in this Congress. None of the other constitutional amendments on Citizens United are going to either. What we're working to do is grow our support with more co-sponsors, and that's what we're focusing on for August. And we will need to have more before we're able to see it move forward in the committee. So but that's not really, it's not really stuck in committee. It's like in committee to get more supporters, and that's the stage that we're at right now. There was a hearing on Citizens United because in January this year was the 10-year anniversary of Citizens United, and so there was a hearing and there was testimony given by Pramila Jayapal, who's our lead for our amendment on the We the People amendment. And that was the first time that there has been any discussion about it. It was a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. So that was good. But right now what we really need to do is advocacy and growing the support and education. I mean, frankly, even a lot of our current co-sponsors still don't really understand how critical this issue, corporate constitutional rights, is to almost everything else that they have coming before them. And so that's our work to do. And that's also part of why we focus a lot of our energy more on the movement building side and the public rather than Congress, even though obviously this is a big part of our plan. So again, encourage you to go look at our strategic plan, because there you can kind of see how all the pieces go together and kind of the pace that we're on, which frankly, we're on schedule to get our amendment passed in 10 years in terms of House co-sponsors and the pace that we sort of set. If we can keep it up, we're behind on the Senate side, so we need to catch that up. And obviously, you know, we'd love to do this faster than 10 years, but if you look at where we are in terms of, you know, not just move to amend, but political power for an agenda of reining in corporate power in this country, we're ways away, and there's a lot to do to build. So that's what we focus on. Let's see, Ronald says, I just found my representative is a co-sponsor, but couldn't find on your website where my senator may stand. So you live in California. So both of your two senators, Ronald, are targets, Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein. We've met with both of their offices numerous times. Both of them have indicated some interest at the staff level of support. And so it would be great to help us organize meeting with your senators. And there are a number of affiliate chapters in California, so you might be able to get in. The closest one to you is the East Bay chapter, but there is also a group in, well, actually, I'm not sure. So Sonoma County has a chapter, and then so does East Bay. So depending on where you are in Marin, one or the other of those is close by. So you may be able to kind of team up with them, but I expect that we should be able to secure an office with, or a meeting with both of those two senators' offices, because we've already been talking to them, and we really would like both of them to be senators who are part of that 5, especially Harris, but Feinstein's staff seem very, very open, actually, so it's worth working on her too. Okay, Paul, thanks for being here. Again, folks can go to movetoamend.org/lobby. That's where you can sign up and kind of get all the information and materials for how to join this campaign and be part of this August effort. And we will follow up with you based on that. And we also will send an email to everybody who registered for this training. So all of you who are here tonight, and those of you on Facebook, you can just watch the recording. It'll be on Facebook, just on our page, if you tuned in late or what have you. So please, don't delay in letting us know that you want to do this, because the sooner you do, the sooner we can start to connect you with other people in your district, find out, get you the information about what the conversations have been with the offices so far, and you can get started on trying to set up that meeting, right? So thanks so much to all of you for being here tonight. I want to let you know that those of you on Facebook, I don't think this is true, but those of you who are here via Zoom should be directed to a feedback link that you can give us your feedback on this webinar and any follow-up that you need. You can also contact us anytime at info@movetoamend.org. Or calling us. That's our number right there. Our next Take Action webinar is going to be on using social media to support the We the People Amendment. That'll be in August, in a couple weeks. So feel free to sign up for that as well. And other than that, we are done. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate your questions. There were over 100 folks who joined us, so I hope that most of you will tune in, and there were almost 300 people who registered for the webinar. So if we can get that many meetings, we can for sure meet our goal of 75 co-sponsors by the end of the year, and also go even further. And if for whatever reason doing a meeting like this is not for you, then I'd ask you to please make a donation to support Move to Amend and support the efforts that others are doing to help keep this cause going strong. And even if you do want to do a meeting and make a donation, of course, we won't turn that away either. So movetoamend.org/donate to support the work that we do. Like I said at the beginning, we are grassroots based, and we don't have big corporate sponsors, and so your donations are really, really important to help us continue to do this work. So have a great night, everyone. Let us know how we can help you, and let's get them in August. It was really great to have you here tonight. Take care.